Pastor Steve Wohlberg is coming to the Village SDA church. Is he coming to be the head pastor of the church, or he's just coming to preach? I'm going to share with you the details when I come back.
Hi, ladies. Imagine your own ministry supporting pregnant mothers and get paid through insurance. Become a community perinatal doula. www.perinatal.academy.
Welcome back. 2 weeks ago, I shared with you that Pastor Jay Gallimore, who was the interim pastor, was leaving, and many SDAs were wondering who the next pastor would be. All right, and so last Sabbath, I was watching the service of the village church to see if new pastor would be introduced, but that did not happen. Instead, a guest speaker preached last Sabbath at the Village SDA church. In fact, I enjoyed his sermon, and this was one of his presentations. Let me share that with you.
40 Years in the Wilderness and Types and Antitypes. And this is written by a guy, his name was Taylor Bunch. And he wrote it for a week of prayer at the Battle Creek Church, in which he had back, I think it was 1938, and I could be wrong on this. But anyway, he wrote this and he gave it for a whole entire week. And in it, what he did is he started going through the travelings of the children of Israel from the time that they were in Egypt, left Egypt, like at the Red Sea, all the way up until they went into the Promised Land. And it's very important that we have to have some kind of an understanding of this, because as Dr. Vaughn read in the scripture today, that exodus that they had, who's that for? It's for those upon whom the ends of the world are come. Who would that be? Just out of curiosity. Okay. Solid answer. Did you hear it? No, I didn't either. Who would that be for? All right, that's right. That's for us. Because don't you believe that the end of the world is coming on us? Do you look at everything that's going on? Can you see the beast of Revelation chapter 13, both of them coming into power? Can you see it? Yeah. That means that we have a short time. So in order for us to be ready for the Lord when he returns, we have to learn the lessons that Israel learned crossing the Red Sea and going into the Promised Land. That's what the premise was. Right before they got into when they were in Kadesh Barnea and the spies brought back the word, God said that you've tempted me how many times? 10 times. Yeah, good. You guys got that right off the bat. Okay, 10 times. So the 10 times they tested him, number one was lack of faith before crossing the Red Sea, which is what we're going to look at right now to close it. I understand that every time you say in closing, you get an extra 10 minutes. Did you know that? So I'm going to say in closing for the next 6 sentences. That'll give me another hour. You good with that? I didn't think so. Okay, so number 2 was complaining over the bitter water of Marah, right? They complained right away. That was only 3 days after they crossed the Red Sea. Man, that's bad. They were already complaining. How about that? All right, how about complaining in the desert of sin? And then they were collecting manna on the 6th day, and it stayed over until the next morning. And what did it breed? Worms, and it stank. That's a sermon in and of itself. Okay, and then the next one, what they did, this is number 5, they attempted to collect manna on the Sabbath. Okay, so there was 2 about the Sabbath, guarding both borders of the Sabbath. It was the test on both. That was unique. Okay, number 6 was complaining over the lack of water of Rephidim. Number 7 was engaging in idolatry at the golden calf around the mount. And number 8 was complaining at Taberah. Number 9 was complaining about the lack of food. And number 10 was failing to trust God instead of entering into the Promised Land, which we kind of covered in Numbers chapter 14. So let's go to Exodus chapter 14. One of the books of Moses will work. I'll just keep on saying them all, I guess. Okay, so Exodus chapter 14. And what we're going to do is we're going to look briefly. In closing, that's an extra 10 minutes, right? You already made the deal with me. You can't renege. Okay, Exodus chapter 14, what we're going to do is we're going to look at them at the Red Sea. And when we talk about this, what I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm very serious about this, is I want you to look internally and see if this applies to you as well. Okay? Can you do that? Make sure that you look internally and understand what's going on here. Because whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope, as he says in Romans. And all these things that happened to them were written for us for ensamples, upon whom the ends of the world are come. So we need to understand that this here is actually present truth. This is righteousness by faith, because faith is the only thing that got them across the water. Okay, so it says in chapter 14, verse 1, "And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel that they may turn in the camp between Pihahiroth and Migdol by the sea over against Baal-zephon. Before it shall ye encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land. The wilderness hath shut them in." So I'm going to give you a couple things right now. They go over there and they cross out of Egypt, and they're standing there and looking at the Red Sea, and they're like, oh yeah, it's pretty nice. Large body of water. How many of you know where the Red Sea is? Keep your hands up. 16 people know where the Red Sea is. Wow. Okay, geography. Red Sea is kind of like by Africa in the Middle East. Right? Yeah. So it's by the land of Ham, and it goes into the land where Shem was. And you got these little forks that come up, and the Red Sea is right over here. And they were like right here. Okay? When you live in Michigan, what do you always do? Oh, here's the Mid, and then I live here. Okay, so this is the Red Sea, and they were right here. Okay? So they needed to go over the Red Sea, and they're looking at it. Now, what's to the north of them? Mountains. What's to the south of them? Mountains. What's to the east of them? What was that? Okay, what was to the west of them? Egypt. Okay, so what was the scariest one? Egypt was the scariest. But what gave them the most problem? That crazy water. Water everywhere, not a drop to drink. I mean, what do you say? I mean, they're standing there at the Red Sea and they can't go across it, right? And so they're looking at it and they're going to God and they're saying, and first they go to Moses, they said, what? Wasn't there enough graves in Egypt that we got buried there? And instead, Moses comes up and he says here, let's look at where this is at. Verse 12, it says, "Is not this the word that we tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians, that we should die in the wilderness." And here's an interesting thing. When you look at it, when they left Egypt, they kind of like meandered. And if you really look at it, that meant that Egypt came from like the southwest. And when Pharaoh got the word, that means the word had to come from the northeast, right? Keep that in mind. Cardinal directions are always important in the Bible. And the next time you see like a word coming from the north and east, it gets the king of the north extremely upset. And you find that in Daniel chapter 11. So again, another reference that we have going in here showing how this is actually end-time language. Now, I brought you to the edge of the gopher hole, but it's up to you to go in and study that out. We don't have time today because I can't say in closing anymore. Oh, I said it again, so I get 10 more. So what we're looking at here is that they're afraid, and Pharaoh has them. And they said, "Is not this the word that we told thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness." Now, the children of Israel, to their credit, in Genesis chapter 15, write that one down. We don't have time to look at it now, but Genesis chapter 15, Moses is making a covenant with God, or God's making a covenant with Moses. Moses is receiving it. And at that point, God is telling Moses that I will make of you a great nation. Abraham's not really able to bear a child right now. He's old, and Sarah hasn't been able to do it. So he has no child potential. But God says, I'm going to bring you a child. And then it keeps on getting better. And he says, yeah, but here's what's going to happen. Your prodigy is actually going to be in a land that they're not heirs to. And they're going to be oppressed. They're going to be slaves for 4 generations, i.e. 400 years. So they're going to be slaves for 400 years. And what was the reason why they were going to be slaves for 400 years? Because God's arbitrary? No, it says because the iniquity of the Amorites was not yet full yet. So he was going to tell Abraham, look, buddy, you're old. I'm going to give you a son. But what's going to be even better yet is that now your people are going to be caught in slavery for 400 years because the people who I'm going to displace, their iniquity was not full yet. So it's kind of hard when you've been in slavery for 400 years and you haven't had a prophet, so to speak, to be able to encourage you in the way to go. So Israel has been kind of, we'll just say, lax in their understanding of God. They're lax. They didn't get it. But now it's going to change. They heard the word of Moses and they're like, we're finally going to be free. And then they're not. When they asked Pharaoh to let them go out into the wilderness for 3 days, God says, I am sure that Pharaoh, in chapter 3 of Exodus, he says, I am sure that Pharaoh will not let you go. The king of Egypt won't do it. And as a result of that, they went in, Pharaoh said no, and he made their life miserable. Just something for you to think about right now. Pharaoh said, you guys are idle, you're idle. He says it twice. That's important in the Bible. He says, you're idle, you're idle. And he goes, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. You're going to make the same amount of bricks that you always have, but this time you're going to have to gather it yourself. And so it says in the Bible that they went and they found stubble to build the bricks. So the arrogance of Pharaoh here is amazing, because if you were building bricks, would you want straw in the bricks or would you want stubble in the bricks? Straw. Straw is what made the strong bricks. So Pharaoh is actually building his kingdom with subpar bricks because of his anger. So his whole entire legacy that he wanted to show that he was the builder was all on corrupted brickwork. Think about that for a while. That's what hatred really does to you. It turns you into something that you never really thought you could be. And in this case, Pharaoh's like, I'll take those inferior bricks if it means I'm going to mess you up. Wow. So this is what the children of Israel was, and that's where they first realized that, hey, following God has consequences. And as a result, they got to the Red Sea and they wouldn't do it. Now, they're at the Red Sea. They see the Egyptians there. Moses then goes and he calms them down. Let's get into this just a little bit here. Pull this one up here to make it a little bit easier. That didn't make it easier at all. Let's continue on in Exodus chapter 14, and I want to look at just a couple of verses. In Exodus chapter 14, go to verse 10, and Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid, and the children of Israel cried unto the Lord. That's a good thing to do. Does the Lord ever expect you not to be afraid? You could be afraid, but you have to turn to him, and he can eliminate that fear. And they said unto Moses, and we did that about the graves, and said, is not this, let's go to verse 13. And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. So again, this is element number one that they should have learned, that the Lord would fight for them, and they need to hold their peace. Because he said, what did he say? He says, I'm going to take you to Canaan. So was the Red Sea too difficult for him to get them to Canaan? No. Did they just see 10 plagues on Egypt? Yes. Did they just see them loaded up, so much so that their clothes are falling off of them because of all the gold and silver that they loaded in their pockets? I mean, Egypt was saying, take everything, just get out of here. Just go. All of our firstborn are dead, including our cattle. Get out of our land. Take all the gold, take everything you want, just get out. And so they're crossing over with all of this, and yet they still forget that God had enough power to get them across the sea. Now, I want to bring out something that I think is very important. Could the Lord have had them do something like Peter and walk across the Red Sea? Would that have been in his power to be able to do that? And so when the Egyptians came, they'd be like, hey, let's walk across the Red Sea too. And all of a sudden they started sinking. Would that have worked? Well, he could have done that, but that won't actually work, because when we read in our scripture reading in 1 Corinthians, it says that when they went through the Red Sea, they were baptized.
So that was one of his presentations, and as I said before the sermon last Sabbath at the Village SDA Church, announcement was made that Pastor Steve Wohlberg will be coming to the Village SDA Church. He will be coming not to be the head pastor of the church, but he is coming to preach.
We have special revival meetings, and we are pleased to announce that Brother Steve Wohlberg, Pastor Wohlberg, will be preaching here. It will be on May 15th and May 16th. This is Friday and Saturday. And we invite everyone, we invite you, and we urge you, please invite your friends, family members, to listen to those sermons and to be transformed.
So it looks like the village church is currently depending on guest speakers. Yes, the village church is currently depending on guest speakers. Last Sabbath, there was a guest speaker. Next Sabbath, Pastor Steve Wohlberg will be coming as a guest speaker. I don't know about the following Sabbath, but I'm praying and I think, or I believe, that by the close of this month, the village church would get its own head pastor. That is what I believe. That is what I believe. Friends, this is all that I had to share with you about what is going on in the village church. I told you that I would come back and update you when a new pastor comes. But as of now, I don't think there is a new pastor at the village church. I'll keep sharing with you updates as I receive them from various sources. Thanks for watching. See you again, and may God bless you.